What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have yet another album review for you. So I was kind of like looking around, seeing what else came out this week. You know, again, this has been kind of a slow month, and I had a different one in mind, but I decided to go over this band because, I mean, outright, I had never jammed one of their full-length albums. So I figured, why not check one out? So today, we are going over the latest offering from Cordyceps, Hell Inside. This also comes out on the 25th of July on Unique Leader Records. This band formed in 2014, originally in Las Vegas, and then moved to Denver. This is their second full-length overall, and again, my first time jamming an entire album. I heard a couple of tracks off of their last album, Betrayal, and thought it was pretty solid, and for those that don't know, this is just some absolutely fucking savage, brutal death metal. Honestly, there's a good chunk of this that, you know, it kind of reminds me why I got into Unique Leader Records in the first place. Like, you know, the newer stuff that's come out on this label, it's been hit or miss. But back in the day, if you wanted to hear some of the most brutal bands on the planet, that was like one of the labels to go to. This band also features current and former members of bands like Botanist, Noctambulist, Avenger of Blood, and Cyclonus Filth, which is a band that I went over in my Colorado States of Metal that I think is pretty damn awesome. And again, full disclosure, going into this, again, having kind of a tenuous relationship with Unique Leader Records these days versus when I got into them in the past, my fear was that this was just going to be like another glitchy deathcore band that just kind of calls itself brutal death metal. It's happened on this label before, but thankfully, this is not that. This is legit brutal death metal, and it is brutal as hell. After you get past the brief but very haunting kind of like, you know, sci-fi synth intro to the opening track, Filth, this song just fucking explodes. The production here is wall-to-wall brutality. It's dense. It is maybe a little overproduced at points. I do feel like the drums really kind of just charge out of the gate and just smack you silly. But that's kind of the entire album, honestly. Like, the entire album just has this heavier than fucking everything sort of production. It's brutal as hell. And while it is maybe like a little bit overdone, it kind of fits what this band is about because every song in here is brutal, it's punchy. There's a lot of stuff on here that I feel like still has its roots in like earlier brutal death metal bands like, you know, Gorgasm, Disgorge, US Disgorge, and even like old Aborted. But it also still has a slightly more modern appeal with bands like Vomit the Soul and I would say Disentomb from Australia too. Like, I got a lot of Disentomb vibes on here. Every song packed with crunchy, chuggy riffs, lots of chromatic chugs. I mean, it's brutal death metal. If they weren't there, then I don't know how brutal it'd be. The vocals are brutal. They're menacing at times. You get some good flips in terms of the vocals, in terms of like, you know, cadence switches, because a lot of it is just very on the riff. And again, when you have those big, heavy chromatic chugs, it's just kind of natural to follow the riff, like you kind of do like the John Gallagher burp on top of it. But there's also sections where you get like more, I wouldn't call them blackened screams, but they're a little bit more high register. They sound a little bit more ghastly. And it kind of fits with what this band does outside of like just the flat out brutality. There's a lot of atmosphere in here, whether it's being generated by like the band itself in terms of the music, like with a lot of like dissonant melodies, especially on songs like Suffocating, I Am Hate, I Am the Plague. A lot of responsibility there. And the last track, Regret, or the second to last track on Spotify, I don't know, it's a little confusing there because I checked their Bandcamp and the archives, and they had the last two tracks flipped from Spotify. I'm just gonna go with Spotify's fucking wrong on this one. But you get a lot of these like distant melodies to kind of add a little bit more atmosphere, give it a more sinister vibe here and there. You know, make it sound evil as well as brutal, because those are kind of like two distinctly different gears. Most of this is brutal as hell. Like, it is just a flat out beat down of blast beats, slams, big heavy syncopated grooves. But the moments where it kind of like, you know, kind of changes the setting, gets a little bit more brooding and dark. Like, I Am the Plague, probably the most brooding, just kind of sinister sounding songs on here. The lead in to that song, I think, is absolutely awesome. You get these creepy, clean melodies, and it kind of builds into this like tribal drum pattern. And it's this slow, steady build. It sounds ominous and dark, almost doomy at times before it gets down to the inevitable blast beats, chugs, but it does return to that, and it kind of gives that song like an overall more ominous vibe versus just coming in and like swinging a sledgehammer at your skull. Because that is kind of the main vibe in here. Like these songs are just out here to fuck you up. Murder All in particular, man, crazy drum work right out of the rip. Nasty, chuggy riffs. It's just what I would call violent songwriting. But it's not entirely just primal, like there's a little bit of nuance to it. I like the fact that there are some, you know, almost suffocation style riffs, like just definitely stuff you would hear Terrence Hobbs play. And that isn't like the only 90s like kind of death metal nod on here. Flock of Sheep in particular, I feel like that has, well, like deicide energy to it. It's like a brutal death metal deicide. The riffs to that song are a little bit thrashier. They don't have the same vibe as like a lot of the riffs played on the album. And if ever there was a song title on this album that just screamed, hey, Glenn Benton would love this shit, that's the one. But staying on that, like going through this album, one of the things that I notice is the riff work is not entirely one-dimensional. Yes, you do get a lot of chromatic chugs. You do get a lot of slams and the syncopated beatdowns. Of course, a lot of machine gun chugging, some heavy tremolos. That's kind of what I expected, you know, on the surface. But there's a lot of dissonant melodies on here, clever leads, and really wicked transitions too. Some of the transitions, I'll admit, are a little odd, like especially the ones with like all the ambience around them, like where they kind of drop out everything and kind of, you know, let the synths or whatever backing tracks they have kind of fill the void for a bit before coming back. You get a bit of that on Disease Mind, which kind of comes very abruptly. Like, you know, you're into this big, heavy, chunky groove, like it's a nasty breakdown, and then it kind of just stops and you get this, you know, sci-fi-ish kind of glitchy atmosphere for a second, and then boom, you're off into like, you know, another set of heavy chugs. It just felt like kind of an unnecessary, like weird pause there. Like, you know, if you removed it, I don't think it would have like harmed the song at all. The transition into the lead in that song though, I think was really cool because it feels like the lead kind of like descends into the song. It's immediately creepy. It's another one of those like nice little mood shifts. The other time they do that little pause thing is on Regret, which honestly, it works a lot more effectively. That song from the rip is just nasty, it's chuggy, good main riff to it, good double time groove. Then you get into the blast beats, and then it takes this big pause. You know, you get this long, drawn out gurgle and, you know, ambience and such, but then it comes back almost like a different song. Like it comes back way more sinister, way more evil. You get these really cool crawling melodies and a very like ominous, dark spoken word section on there. It's honestly one of my favorite moments on this album because it closes out the album perfectly. Towards the end, you get these like big like single hits on the floor toms. It's just kind of drones out into the ether of hell, if hell has ether, I don't know. But a lot of this album overall kind of walks a good balance of doing like a lot of the tried and true like tropes of brutal death metal, like again delivering on the brutality, the chugs, but also occasionally stepping outside of it, you know, giving it a little bit of atmosphere, a little bit of texture. And, you know, for the most part, I would say it does it really well. Sometimes I think it gets a little too in love with the atmosphere, as I said. The one song in particular I just thought maybe you had too much of it was Suffocating. While the song itself is awesome, it's sandwiched between what I would say are 2 extra minutes of ambient noise that didn't necessarily need to be there. The opening of the song, I think, is pretty good. It's just too long. Like you have, again, this ambient drone and hum of, you know, something dark and ominous, you know, kind of stock spooky, I'll be honest. But when they add the fluttering, clean guitars in there, I kind of like that. I would have liked to have seen it like build into the song like a little bit better. It kind of just peters out and then the song just kind of comes in like a fucking jump scare. You get that slower, more menacing start, and then it gets into like the blast beats. It's chuggy, it's violent, it's sick breakdowns and shit. The song itself, I dig. And then you get this long outro with a piano and again more ambience, and that's another minute or minute and a half of just like, okay, we had the setting to begin with, we didn't need the outro necessarily. And on the other hand, I would say there are points where it does get like a little too stripped down. Obliterate, or I mean, if you're listening to it on Spotify, it might still be Regret on that one. Again, the tracks might be flipped. That song, while it's brutal and chuggy as hell, much like all of these songs, I feel like that one just kind of relies on a very repetitive riff pattern. It's kind of the same riff, they just kind of play it, you know, a couple of different ways. And in comparison, like a lot of these songs feel way more dynamic than this one. Like this one just kind of just lays on the chromatic chug, changes around the pattern every now and then. There's a little bit of like a dissonant melody on the chorus that kind of opens the song up, but then it just kind of corrects course and goes back to the chugs that, again, like, I like chugs, but these chugs don't have as much character as, well, I'd say like literally every chugathon that's on here. Other complaints I guess you can make in a generalized sense is, there are definitely some moments on here where I feel like they could have continued on certain riffs that I thought were just hookier than hell. But, they kind of did a course correction to something that was a little bit more comfortable. Again, chugathon, blast beat, slam breakdown. But for the most part, I dug this. Honestly, I thought this was pretty damn solid. The complaints I have overall, I don't think really harm this much in terms of it being like a solid listen. And I like the fact that this is not like super one-dimensional. There's a lot of like nuance to this, a lot of cool transitions on here into territory I didn't think they would get into. Well, I definitely have some criticisms of this album. Overall, I thought it was a pretty solid listen, and I like the fact that it had more depth than I initially thought it would. There's a little bit of modern appeal to it. There's still some like classic, old school, like brutal death metal appeal to it. And again, this is the kind of like band that I kind of looked for years ago when it came down to Unique Leader before, shit started to change. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. I enjoyed this for the most part. I do think some of the songs might have been padded out for length a little bit, like a little too drawn out. But I like the fact that a lot of these songs are very dynamic. Again, lots of dissonant atmosphere in here to kind of give it a more evil feel, because this album is already solid at being brutal. Like, this is just chuggy and menacing. Lots of slam breakdowns. A lot of the stuff that you expect from brutal death metal. But all that atmosphere and dissonance here, that keeps me engaged. And honestly, when it gets down to being brutal again, after one of those transitions, it sounds a little bit more fresh and I'm back into it. It's a good balance of being like, brutal and riffy and straight to the point, but also being a little bit technical too. Yeah, this album's pretty damn solid. If you're a big fan, especially of Disentomb, like that's kind of the one that really stuck with me, but also, Gorgasm, Aborted, Vomit the Soul, Early Hideous Divinity, Hour of Penance, and even like some Suffocation and Gorgasm too. Check this album out. It's pretty damn good. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They're only 99 cents. Our lone perk is doing a members-only live stream, which, yeah, I know we got to do it. But again, schedule's got to get lightened up. And hopefully next month we'll be able to do it, because John is... he's going to be stuck on this overtime thing for a little bit longer for sure. Like, for real, when you guys see him on here, generally he's here late at night after he gets off of work, and he's completely gassed, but he wants to do a video because it's his way of decompressing a bit. Anyway, membership's the main way to support the channel, and there is a join button down there for you to kick and punch and whatever else you do in the pit. You can do it to that button. It won't tell anyone. And of course, thank you guys so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that shit. It means the world to us. Tons of content in the future. Hoping August is going to have a lot more releases. I know there's some big ones coming out next month. This month has been a lot of like kind of scrounging around for stuff to talk about. But there's definitely more collection updates coming. Shred has a segment coming up. And again, we're going to figure out some other topical stuff when we can get together. But either way, we want to keep you guys overloaded with content as much as we can, because you guys are absolutely awesome. And we still love doing this, and that is large in part to you guys. So one more big thank you, because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.